We're seeing some different places around the world where there's some lack of confidence in leadership, political upheaval. I want to start with one we haven't just mentioned yet. That's Germany there. I want to get a sense of what you're seeing when it comes to Germany. I do want to point out the DAX is trading pretty much close to its all-time high. We've actually seen bond yields rise at the same time. How do you view what's going on in Germany and the investor impact there?
Well, in two ways. One is that there's a lot of talk at this point that Germany is economically is beyond the pale, and there's no rescuing it. How I see it is a two-month election campaign in which what you're likely to see is a stronger center-right candidate and a much more serious focus on economic recovery. And then we've got to consider both Germany and France in the broader context of the European Union, which essentially is kind of slowed to a full stop and may even start to reverse under some analyses. So you've got a real serious problem in the EU, which is one of the biggest trading blocs in the world. The other thing I would say to you about your chart is that you're looking at Western allies, and there's certainly a lot of malaise to go around in the Western allies. But I don't need to tell you or the audience about the difficulties in China right now. So that kind of doubles up the problem.
Yeah, we're also talking about some issues in South Korea as well. I want to stick with Germany and Europe for just a second. A really interesting data point that came out in an article is that the average German household has about $2,600 less in spending power due to some of these economic problems. How does that impact, as you mentioned, the rest of the Eurozone and specifically the euro?
Well, everyone knows that the German and French economies are kind of have been for the last generation the twin engines of economic growth in Europe. If you've got political instability in France that leads to a negative economic picture, and you've already got that going on in Germany, that's going to have much wider impacts on the Eurozone generally, and is going to make it that much more difficult for the region to recover.
All right, so if I'm a U.S. investor, how should I read all this, specifically if I'm a currency investor or someone that invests in companies that are based in these different countries, like a Mercedes or an LVMH?
Well, sure. There's two ways. One is to be crass about it is simply that anything bad for the rest of the world is good for the United States, because what you've got a combination in the United States that's unique of kind of economic exceptionalism and geopolitical exceptionalism, and both of those reinforce the other. But the other way to look at it is that those are shifting sands and could shift very quickly. It's much more in the market's interest to have a much more stable political situation in France, in Germany, and South Korea, because what that'll do is not only improve those economies, but also and improve the investing environment,
right,
but also improve the United States even further.
So, Terry, let's go back to the Canadian dollar. Again, trading at one of its lowest levels since all the way back in the pandemic. A key trading partner for the United States. Some of the reasons for this weakness are budget issues, but also the idea of these tariffs that the president-elect has proposed. If you're a U.S. investor, again, how do you view that weakness in the the loonie, they call it up there? Does it have a material impact on the U.S. markets or any major U.S. companies or sectors?
Sure. Canada is one of our largest trading partners, and one thing I would tell investors is that I think the dimensions of the Canadian political situation are a little too soon and are breaking just enough to make sure that that it's difficult to figure out what the economic impacts are going to be. It's not clear at this point, I think, whether or not the Trudeau government going down means that there will be a party shift in Canada, or whether that Freeland and some of the other Liberals will take up the mantle and continue as the largest party and the ruling party. So there is temporary weakness in the Canadian dollar, but I think that's refracted on much more worldwide than the incident Canadian situation.